Paul Steiger, ein Journalist von altem Schrot und Korn. 20 Jahre stand er an der Spitze des Wall Street Journal, bis er 2008 seinen Posten als Chefredakteur aufgab und das gemeinnützige Redaktionsbüro ProPublica gründete, um den investigativen Journalismus zu revolutionieren. Innerhalb kürzester Zeit wurde ProPublica weltweit bekannt. Wie aber lässt sich der preisgekrönte Qualitätsjournalismus dauerhaft finanzieren?
What ProPublica tries to do is to find examples of abuse of power and shine a spotlight on it in such a way that the public has the ability to make change happen. And power can be government and business, that's where most of the power is these days, but also in the education system, the health system, the legal system, even the nonprofits and the media. Any place where there's power, it's a fair place for us to poke in. In every way possible. I mean, the whole world of communication has been transformed by the rise of the internet, without question, and it's almost easier to say what's the same rather than what's different. Twitter, Facebook, it is both helpful and confusing. You know, I mean, it's confusing in that there's a lot of noise out there, and it's just it can set you off in a wrong direction. But often you'll see from Twitter that something's happening, and you check it out. And Facebook is an amazing tool for investigative journalism. I mean, I remember my last year at the Wall Street Journal, sitting in on a seminar that a 24-year-old young reporter at our San Francisco bureau was doing for a mixture of experienced and younger journalists about how to use Facebook. And the goal was to find people who had recently left a company that you were trying to dig into, because those are the ones who are most likely to talk. You know, you find somebody who's now in a company, they're like, is this a trick? You know, are you going to get me fired? But if you've left the company, people are prepared to talk. Well, what this girl did was, she said, okay, pick a company. Somebody picked a company. I remember it happened to be General Electric, a huge company. So she went on Facebook, it was projected on a screen, and she came up with a list of like 100 names of people that had left General Electric in the last 6 months. But then she didn't stop there. She captured databases of some of the people in the room from their own Facebook accounts, merged the two, and she came up with a dozen people who were personally known to someone who was personally known to one of the people in the room. So instead of making a cold call, hello, I'm a reporter from, in this case, the Wall Street Journal, you can say, hello, I'm a friend of Susie's, and Susie thought you might be willing to talk to me. You know, it's a much easier way for a reporter to get access. It's just made it much more simple to get people who will talk. Look, I think that for the intermediate term, a very appropriate role for philanthropy is to support investigative journalism and foreign reporting. This doesn't mean it's going to be the only source. I mean, look, I am quite confident that publications like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, entities like the New Yorker's, 60 Minutes, 2020, and so on, these are going to survive, and investigative reporting is an important part of their DNA. They'll keep doing it. So you don't have to turn entirely to the nonprofit sector to make this happen. And there's some experiments now for generating foreign reporting, which are for-profit models, and this may work. But I think that this is a time when philanthropists and foundations that are seeking to strengthen the underpinnings of democracy, this is a very fruitful area for them to look. And I get the sense that our emergence and the wisdom of Herb and Marion Sandler, who were our initial funders, and Herb is our very active chairman. You know, they were brilliant enough to see this early, and I think that their stepping up has encouraged others to begin to look into the field, or to some that have been doing it for a while, to get them to intensify their interest. Yeah, but the Sandlers have a history of supporting moderately left and Democratic Party issues. But we agreed right from the outset that ProPublica was going to be nonpartisan. It would go down the middle. And look, I ran the Wall Street Journal news coverage for 16 years, and my bosses there were, if anything, more conservative than the Sandlers are liberal. And we had a very good relationship where they did not know in advance what we were doing. They could comment after the fact, but they didn't know in advance what we were doing. And in the case of the ProPublica board, there is no role in deciding what journalism we do or what areas we focus on, other than looking for examples of abuse of power and trying to shine a spotlight on them. Well, you know, you would be a better judge of that than I, but my sense is that in the UK, they're already people are already looking into trying something like this. I don't know any of the details, but I've heard considerable interest. And you know, look, there the Great Panic has cut into some fortunes, but last time I looked, there's still some billionaires in Germany. You know, I don't see any reason why this couldn't happen in Germany or Italy or France. I think that the department store model or supermarket model of journalism, which operated so successfully for the vast majority of the 40 years of my career in newspapers, that is no longer going to be the dominant model. Yes, there will be some you know, very broad-based journalistic organizations. You know, New York Times, traditional Huffington Post maybe is an emergent style where you cover multiple topics. You become, in a way, your own editor. You select what sites you're going to look at, just as you used to select what sections of the newspaper you went to. And instead of all of those sections being produced by a single newspaper company, they're produced by multiple institutions operating. For journalists, it becomes an environment where you need to have much more entrepreneurship. You can individual entrepreneurship. You can no longer say, okay, I'll sign on for a small publication, and then I'll go up to medium-sized or large publication, and then I'll stay there for the next 30 years of my career. you're more like one of my daughters is in the movie industry in California. She's a film editor. She has never had a job. She's always had projects. You know that the movie is over when they turn off the phones. And then what do? You work your network and you get the next job. And she works whenever she wants to. She makes a very good living, but she doesn't have a job. You know, I think for some journalists, it's going to be the same kind of thing. You work for this website for a couple of years, maybe you and your friends then start your own, then that works, you sell it to an entrepreneur, then you go do another one. I mean, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I think it's going to be an environment where many smaller institutions, rather than a few large institutions, will characterize the environment. Well, I mean, a lot of these journalists are doing terrific work in their 20s, and then at the sort of the upper edges of the age scale, you have a lot of people who have been bought out or laid off, but they've had their health benefits paid for. In many cases, they've gotten severance stipends. Their sort of monthly cost structure is sufficiently subsidized, so they can work for less than they used to need, and they're finding opportunities too. They're coming in and doing. You know, we have a couple of people who do part-time copy editing for us. We've got people who do research for us. I mean, we're not able to pay maybe quite as much as they would have gotten in their peak years, but they're doing fine. It's the person who's 45, you know, with a family of 3 kids and 2 dogs, that is really hammered by this. Some of them are lucky enough to kind of thread the needle, but others get caught in this, and it's really, you know, a revolution of declining expectations, and it's tough. And I'm hoping that, you know, new things will emerge. I mean, journalism skills can translate into other kinds of jobs, you know, research, advertising, public relations. There are other things that folks with these skills can do, but they didn't sign up for that, and it's hugely disturbing and painful to families all across this business, and my sympathy is enormous for them. Well, the budget is this year.
All right. Paul, thank you so much. You have had us. Thanks.